are live. Hi, thanks for being here. We will just let a few people jump on here before we start our conversation. And if you're new here, then welcome. Thanks for being here with us. We are here every Tuesday night at 7:30. My name is Lindsay and this is Jess. And we are answering questions that have been sent in by you guys about pretty much anything under the sun, horse related. So the question that we're answering today is actually a topic rather than really a question. But what we're addressing is the most recent rule change with NRHA, which was non-professionals used to not be allowed to accept sponsorships. And for 2022, they've changed that rule to now allow non-pros to accept sponsorship. So we want to talk about that a little bit, and mostly we want to get your opinion on that, what you think about that, whether you think it's fair, whether you think it's something that you're looking forward to. If it's something that you don't understand, we'll kind of go through a little bit of that and explain what it is. If it's not something that you're really familiar with, you don't really know what that means. But if you have thoughts about it, we want you to share them here because we're interested to hear what you guys have to say about that. So like I said, we're here every Tuesday at 7:30 and we're answering questions that you guys have sent in. And we can send you the replays. If you're interested in watching after the fact, we can send you the replays. If you sign up either by going to our website under the education tab, there's a place for you to sign up there. Or if you have found us on Facebook, then you can click on the sign up button, which is on our cover page. Or you can hit the link in our bio if you're finding us on Instagram, and you can sign up there. And then every week you get the topic delivered, you get the replay from the previous week, you get an update if you're a Momentum member, you get your link to sign into the hub and what's new, and any new featured TAC or upcoming clinics and that kind of thing is all in that email. Also on the education page are any of the free resources that we have created for you. So if you haven't been there yet, then you probably want to check that out and type whatever it is that you're looking for into the search bar and see what comes up, because we've done a lot of talking on these lives now, and everything is searchable right down to the word. So it looks like there's a few people here with us, and it looks like you can hear us okay. Thank you for being here with us, guys. So the NRHA rule changed. So the rule changed from non-professionals not being allowed to accept sponsorships to now being allowed to accept sponsorships. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Do you want to explain, in case there's somebody that doesn't really know what that means, the difference between pros and non-pros, and why this is a contentious issue?
So by definition, a non-professional is exactly as it says, non-pro. Anybody who does not take money for their services in the horse industry. In the NRHA, it is...
Not for any services in the horse industry, for teaching or training. So you could still be a farrier, you could still be a vet, you could still be a lot
teaching
of
or
things.
training in the
Right.
reining, cow, horse, ranch riding disciplines is considered a non-pro in the reiners. The reason this is kind of a hot topic with a lot of people is because there's always been a gray area in the non-pros of people wanting to push the limit and it doesn't apply to them. We want to keep the non-pros as clean as possible, as honest as possible, so that there's a fair playing field for all of our customers, our non-pros, where they don't feel like so-and-so's not playing by the rules. Very simple. There's always been, so a non-pro has to own their own horse. A non-pro... Or lease it. They cannot take money for doing it. And they're showing as a non-professional.
And they sign a declaration when they get their membership. They actually sign a declaration saying that they don't take money to teach lessons or train horses. They used to sign something that said that they didn't take sponsorships. What's the rest of it? The rest of the declaration? We have it here. Given instruction for showing or training a performance horse, trained, shown, or assisted in the training of a horse not owned by myself, accepted payment or entry fee expenses for horses I have ridden that was not owned by myself. What's that last one? I reside on, work for, am included in advertising or publicly identified with or derive monetary remuneration directly or indirectly from a horse training facility. I have been employed by a university to serve as a coach for an equestrian team competing in organizations such as NCAA or IHSA. So those are all the things that you have to declare that you have not done in order to be eligible for the non-pro.
So there's always two parts of this. Is the non-pro, because it is a place for people to show that are non-professionals, and before we get rid of, it's not an easier place to show. At most shows, the non-pro is tougher because the non-pros can go afford to buy a nicer horse. They can show that horse. They get to know that horse. It's not that it's easier, but it's a place for a strictly
And it's
non-pro
bigger.
to go
There are
forward.
more people in it, which makes it harder to
Yes.
get a cheap win.
And the idea, not a cheap one, but everybody is competing against their own peer group. Over the years, there's been so many fights break out about this, not just about the sponsorship, but about people just not following the rules. I lose a lot of respect for a few people come to mind because they would ride other people's horses, fake it, put the horse in their names. And some of them were getting paid, and it even got out that they were getting paid, and they all said, well, it doesn't apply to me, it's not my big deal. I lose a lot of respect for people. Just follow the rules. The rule that is now changed is whether sponsorship comes into that area. And it's a tough one because from hauling youths around and non-pros and stuff, there's what is truly a sponsorship is my idea. In that, if a kid's going to, let's say, the Congress or the World Shows or going down the road, and their family friend gives them $200 to pay for gas, is that a sponsorship? My belief, right or wrong or indifferent, is that as soon as you're doing it to put up a business's banner to promote a business, it becomes a business transaction. If I give some kid $200 for fuel money, that's helping them out.
If you do as Jessica Fell, give them $200
Right.
of fuel money rather than as Hazel Fell Performance Horses.
Right, if I give them
a
$200
banner.
and I expect them to put my banner up at the horse show, I expect, patches on the shirt, then that becomes a different ordeal. And the sponsorship thing for a non-pro is a tough, where, like every rule that they have for the non-pro division, where is that line and where do they draw that line and keep it clean for everybody involved? I think that to me is the biggest one. Do I think a non-pro should be able to help out if needed? Sure.
Help out their friend.
Well, like if
with
somebody wants to
coaching?
go to the Congress and they want to, need a little help, financially, should they be able to?
Financially.
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
But to me, the biggest thing is as soon as you have to advertise them in exchange, that becomes a different deal. Whether it be the banners or the whatever. I think that's when it becomes tricky.
Okay, so just to play devil's advocate for a second, if it is not okay for a non-pro reiner to have a sponsorship, what do you think about Olympic athletes or other athletes in other events getting sponsorships? That is basically what you're saying, a business transaction. Everybody. What about the argument of everybody else is doing it, so why can't the reiners? Why can't the non-pros and the reiners?
I feel like it's a gray area in every discipline, though, because is it an amateur athlete or a professional? If a professional wants to put their face out there and do that, that's completely up to them. And that's where it becomes a different thing. I don't know any of the other events, so I can't speak to it.
Yeah.
The one comment that was just on here is define clean. Well, clean to me is just following the rules. Own your horse or lease it. Don't get paid by somebody else to do that. And go from there. Just 1 second. You keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay, I'm just going to answer some of these things. So, let's go back to the beginning here, because I think, Laura, you said something back here. Would there be a lot of big companies or any companies sponsoring non-pros in any significant way? Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I know, Laura, you had said before that you felt that it was okay to have a sponsorship for a non-pro as long as it was capped at a certain amount. That's an interesting perspective too, because if we're talking about a sponsorship being significant enough that it's covering the entry fees, it's covering the cost for that rider to then ride full time, that's a professional, right? That what differentiates that then from a professional?
And
so,
to me, as soon as you have a cap where you say, well, this much is acceptable, there will always be somebody stretching the line and saying, okay, they gave me 5,000. Well, and then you find out plus this and plus that and plus that.
yeah.
As soon as you get into gray areas, people are going to stretch it and they're going to be dishonest. And in reality, this only is a hot topic because it only affects certain non-pros, higher end non-pros,
Yeah.
who have been stretching the rules for years anyways, by what they ride. And, they say they bought the horse a month before a show or whatever. And,
Yeah.
and a month later it's back in the certain person's name. And there's only a certain amount of people that this really applies to. Once you start talking about companies doing it for the company benefit, not a personal sponsorship, I feel like that's the problem. As soon as you need your name on there as a company, you're doing it as a business, therefore it is a business venture.
Okay. So what Laura said was, would there be a lot of big companies or any companies sponsoring non-pros in any significant way? I don't know that we know that yet.
Nobody knows.
We don't know that yet.
There will be,
Find
because there's
out.
enough money for certain people. There always will be.
So Lisa said yes, and I'm not sure, Lisa, what you said yes to, whether that was that you could hear us or whether you felt that it was fair or not fair. Would love to hear what you think there. Joy said, doesn't someone like Mandy McCutcheon already have sponsors?
No, her husband does.
And her son.
Well, and her son, who are both professionals.
Yeah.
No, of course, her stall signs have banners all up just because she can say, her husband and her son
And it
have
says right in the rule book that if you're married to a professional, that you're not considered to be a professional. That you can be married to a professional and still ride as a non-pro. So it's right in the rule book. Laura is saying, I think if someone makes like 5,000 or less, that doesn't make them a professional. They could be a summer camp counselor for all that means. Oh, you're talking about somebody who makes that money doing training or teaching, or 5,000 from a sponsorship?
anything to do with the money, though. As soon as you say less than, everybody wants to go on that gray area. So they say, okay, well, I made 5. Well, somebody gave me an extra 1,000. Okay, I made a little extra. Cut it off. As soon as, to me, it's make it black and white so that you either are or you're not.
But we're not just after your opinion. We're looking at everybody's opinion here.
Well, then I'm out of here.
I know. The other thing that Laura said was, do the Congress youth teams get sponsored? I think if there's an actual monetary line, then it's not really giving anyone a real advantage. So that's interesting too, because lots of teams get sponsored. It's not a dollar amount, it's parts of their trip and entry fees and stuff like that. Joyce saying they are professionals in the end and get paid, the Olympic athletes. Yeah. Kevin, I think the advantage in this goes to the non-pro spouses of trainers. The non-pros with restaurant chains and car dealerships, the ones with more will get more.
And that's the reality of life. That's just everything. There's always going to be people that have that. There's people that say, well, especially in the States, where you can say, you can write that off as a business venture. If somebody buys a horse and they say it's a business so they can connect it with another company they have, and then you see Kevin Simmons, multi-million-dollar car dealership is sponsoring Kevin Simmons, the rider. That's just always going to be the reality of it. The ones that as you say, the ones with more will get more. It is easier for them.
Will they get more though? They would have, what if that person or that dealership was already paying all the entry fees and now they're just using it as an opportunity to advertise?
Right, they advertise and they get some tax write-offs, and
Yeah.
the who you know is always a big thing in the world. I mean, that doesn't matter if it's showing horses or not. And there's some farms. If a person owns a farm and they'll put their name on their shirts, their farm names, they own the farm. It's their own personal farm. There's always going to be stuff
well, a
like that.
person can own their own farm and train and sell horses, and that can be their full-time job. As long as they're not being paid by somebody else, they can still be a non-pro. That's another, I don't know, contentious issue or interesting.
There's so many
loophole.
parts of it that there's
Yeah.
there's so many ways people can get around it with the right thing.
Yeah.
That it's tricky.
Pat says, I agree with Jess. Either you're getting someone else's money or you're not. Yeah. I like that. I think that's good. Gail, from what I understand, which isn't much, it sounds unreasonable that a non-pro can accept money from a company to advertise that company. It is a business transaction to me. Also, won't this make it harder for newer open riders to raise sponsorship money at the local level or in the bigger arenas? What about non-pros being sponsored by their own companies or family businesses? Doesn't this open up another can of worms? So many questions. Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, Gail, I think, to see what happens, how it kind of plays out over the next little while. And this just made me think of another thing that I wanted to bring up, which was that the membership was not polled. The membership wasn't asked about this rule change. It was a decision made amongst the board members, which is the part that I have the issue with, I think. The biggest issue with, I think, is that
When the big non-pros that are actually going to get this or taking the sponsorship, or the ones on the board, becomes
I think a lot of these things that they're making decisions about in rule changes, especially a rule change about the non-pros themselves should be consulted. I can't understand that logic. I don't have experience on the NRHA board or on a lot of boards, but I can't understand why and I know it'd be a lot of work, obviously, to poll the members about things like that, but I can't understand why the membership isn't being polled about. This is a major decision for some people. This is a huge decision for some people. And obviously where I'm teaching lessons and, getting people into that entry level of reining, to me, it feels like it's another intimidating factor for people to come in, for somebody who's showing for the first time, who saved up all their money to buy one horse, and it's a lot of money for that person to have that horse and to have a saddle that they can compete in, and then to go pay the entry fees, and then to show up and be competing against somebody who's backed financially by a bunch of these companies, to me that feels like a deterrent for that Green Rainer to go to the show, and that's a very dangerous decision, I think, for somebody like the NRHA to make. I think they're really trying to promote the sport from the high end, what they call the top end down. And I really struggle with that mentality, because I feel like the strength of a club or a business or anything is in the new growth, the new, all the seeds that are being planted that are coming up, rather than catering to a few individuals at the top.
And one that scares me, so
I didn't answer any of Gail's thing in here, though. I went on my own tangent. So
she had talked about the entry-level rider,
Yeah.
professionals and stuff like that.
yeah,
Those
we
don't
should touch on
scare.
that.
Those don't scare me as much as the horse shows themselves. If the companies want to help out an entire industry, help out the shows.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing we've talked about.
If
gonna
we
take
can't get to
money
the
out
show,
of the shows and put it into the non-pro, that's not good for.
well, you're putting it into an
Anybody.
individual's hand
Yeah.
instead of spreading it out for the entire shows where everybody
Mm-hmm.
can benefit from it.
And not just in pot money, but like in all of the sponsorship money that goes into, the quality of the awards or the hospitality stuff, like the breakfasts and the, all those things, the taco party or whatever.
The things that make showing
Things
fun.
that make it fun.
So if they're looking at only sponsoring individuals, then that really takes away and it makes it harder from the shows themselves. The open riders, one thing I've, said for years is the open riders can take care of themselves. This is our job. This is our business. We'll figure that out ourselves. If we have a company that we truly like, then we'll go with it.
You're talking about Gail's point about taking the money away from the open riders that are just starting out. The sponsorship money? Is that what you're talking about?
Right, like as a new open rider,
take
you
that
have to go,
sponsorship money.
you have to go get that. You have to go, be at the shows and talk to those companies and stuff.
Yeah, you
It's
have
the
to
shows
be-
themselves that
yeah.
are going to be struggling.
Yeah.
For me personally, I don't think sponsorships for products and money, to me, it doesn't work. The biggest people that sponsor horse shows are pharmaceuticals, clothing, and saddles. And, if somebody comes up to me with a new pharmaceutical that's sponsored by so-and-so, I don't care. Because half the time, if I go talk to Joe Blow about the pharmaceuticals he's feeding, it's just a sponsorship. He just made money for it. It didn't mean anything. So it's a useless sponsorship.
Yeah, a lot of people abuse the sponsorship.
To me, if you don't stand behind that company, and
Yeah.
that's the difference.
Yeah.
And as a non-pro, it becomes a different.
Yeah.
What am I trying to say? Like,
Well, for
then you have people just trying to go out and get anything as a
Right.
sponsorship,
right.
and there's no integrity in the sponsor. I shouldn't say none, but there's such a limited amount of integrity, I think, in the sponsorships anymore. Anyways, that it's just a business transaction. You're not standing behind a company. You just want the money. The integrity, if a person really likes it and somebody wants to say, I use this product, then that's right. But if they're just doing it to get paid, then it isn't a good deal anyways. And it's going to hurt the horse
Or
industry.
just doing it to get a patch on their shirt, or just doing it to get a thing on their sign. That seems to be really popular. Everybody wants to look like they have a sponsorship, and they don't really want to know about the product or use the product or whatever. I can't get this one to work. Laura, I think if someone has to come up with an extra few hundred or few thousand to allow them to show, then we shouldn't fault them for that. I'm thinking of people who teach beginner lessons or work at a tack shop, which then sponsors them. If that's what that person needs to pay their entry fees or hay for the year, we shouldn't close opportunities off to people who are doing what it takes. Yeah, but then where do you draw the line if you're going to allow somebody to teach a few lessons? So beginner lessons you can actually do and not be a professional. You can actually
the
teach
NRHA.
in the NRHA. Yeah, you can actually teach some lessons as long as you're not teaching a Western performance horse. Western or a performance horse?
Western performance horse.
Do you want to check that in that rule book? Because I thought it said performance horse, and it specifically outlines reining, ranch riding, cow horse, those things. So
Reining,
if you
rein, cow horse, cutting, roping, ranch riding, ranch versatility, etc. So they put the etc. in there just to make sure that
meaning,
we don't know.
Yeah. So you can teach some lessons, Laura. If you're teaching beginner lessons, you can do that without being an open rider. But if you're going to allow somebody to teach lessons and stuff so that they can pay their entries, you still have to have a differentiate between non-pro
And if you want to
open
take
rider.
if you want to take that money
Yeah,
for giving lessons,
yeah,
just enter the open.
yeah,
Follow the rules and follow the
yeah,
open.
yeah. That I think
If
is the
you
thing.
are qualified to give the lesson, you
yeah.
are qualified to come play in the open.
Yeah, I think that's the whole industry is unregulated as far as teaching lessons and training horses. You can just say that you're a horse trainer and you can do it, and then you can go to the horse show and just say that you're not.
Well,
and
and NRHA has come up
show
with
as a non-pro.
enough divisions for that.
So Becky's saying, I completely agree. It's going to open up a can of worms, and I think the membership should have had a say. Yeah. What would you have, Becky? Becky, what would you have said if you had a say as a non-pro rider? Would you have wanted it, or would you have said no? Becky, in saying that, I'm currently out sponsor shopping. Okay, never mind. Anybody else on here who is a non-pro who will be looking for sponsors or taking a sponsorship, or that this has impacted? Yes, totally agreeing. Money is already a big advantage. So having sponsorships, it will just allow a bigger gap. And yes, giving it to individuals who are non-pro will take away the money from the clubs. Yeah. Joy, don't you think that people like Jose and Mandy will automatically get sponsors? And I have riders in USA that ride in the same classes that surely don't have sponsors. Just saying it is an advantage to this type of non-pro. There are only so many local companies. What do the local riders, if they're trying to get sponsors, it might start a new type of competition. Well, it indirectly is an advantage to your riding and your score, I guess, right? If you have a sponsorship. But I think the majority of the sponsors are like a family business that's pitching in towards expenses for a tax write-off.
There is a few like Jose and so if anybody doesn't know, so who she's talking about, Jose and Mandy are two of the top non-pros in the NRHA.
Yeah. Mandy's $1 million rider.
And Mandy's
and Jose's
I guess a special deal too, because she is the wife of a trainer, the mother of a trainer, daughter of a trainer, and rides in the non-pro. So she's always been under fire for many years.
Yeah.
So she's always, and then Jose, it is not his job having the horses, but he has a huge operation. He stands a multi-million-dollar stud. A stud that has produced multi-million dollars now, breeds a ton of mares, sells them, makes money off selling them, buying them, shows a lot, shows all over the place, and both are extremely successful. Will they get the sponsorships? Yes, they're the ones that deserve it. They're very talented. They've worked hard at it.
They have a lot of exposure. It makes sense for a company to sponsor that person.
But it's always been a gray area because. Like Jose has trainers working at his barn, and he rides a lot. Yes, he's a non-pro. He doesn't take other people's horses in for training, or maybe he does that, whatever. But he has his own deal. But he's also financially able to have that big barn and that big amount of horses so that he's always well mounted and it can go through. I know for years, I don't know if it does anymore. So Jose, his family makes tequila and he owns some liquor stores. And on the side of his trailer, what was it? Cinco Blanco? Whatever his company name was. And it's his own company.
Yeah.
Is it a sponsorship when it's your own company? You know, again, I wouldn't say it is. Does he has the financial resources to be able to go do that a lot of people wouldn't? You bet. You can't knock him for that. You know, congratulations to him for being successful to where he can do that. But it's disheartening from a lot of other people when they go to horse shows and they say, well, Jose's here, you know, he has 6 horses and, you know, I have 1. It's already a little disheartening. But to get outside sponsors, I think is where that becomes a problem.
It really makes it a gray line.
You know, if your own company does it, that's
really
different.
Makes it a gray area. Yeah.
What do you do if you're trying to get... The biggest thing with trying to get any kind of sponsors is you go out and pound the pavement and talk to the people, you know, the companies that you like and what you can do.
Christine says, nope, that's what being a professional is, being paid to perform a task.
Right.
So, Christine, you're saying you don't agree with the sponsorship? Becky says that you would have said no. So if the membership had been asked, you would have said no. But if you can't beat them... Laura, I think if you've made $1 million, then you aren't non-pro. If you have a full-time job doing non-horse things, you should be a non-pro. Yeah.
So there's another gray area, though.
Yeah.
Like you take Mandy, who doesn't train horses, but spend a lot of time at the barn. The cow horses do have a rule that once you've won so much money as a non-pro, you're out, you're an open rider.
What if you don't have a full-time job, but you ride? Like...
Well, or it becomes so, let's say you have
like you're a
old
stay-at-home
family
mom and you ride. You don't have a full-time job, but you ride, right?
Right, or you have old family money where you have the ability to stay home and don't need to do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's hard. Any which way to do the eligibility is really tricky.
And they've struggled with it for years because every
Yeah.
time they put a rule, somebody can beat the rule. And they all say, well, it doesn't apply to me, or, you know, everybody's looking for that gray area. And I guess just because I do think my opinion matters, I'm a big one on just make it black and white and keep it that way.
Laura, if you're riding full-time, you're a pro. It shouldn't be this hard to figure out, but I understand that there are intricacies. Yeah, there are. I don't ride full-time. I teach lessons on the ground, mostly to beginners, and I have to compete against my husband, who rides horses all day.
You always beat me. What are you worried about?
On horses you trained.
Yeah.
Joy would have said no. You would have said no. Are you against getting a sponsorship? Like if somebody came to you and said, Joy, I think you're a really beautiful rider and I like what you stand for. I've seen that you're using my product. You know, can I give you a whole box of this mane and tail shampoo and a couple $1,000s for your entry fees, and you can tell all your friends about it and post it on social media? Would you do it? Sally, non-pros that have a large influence on social media, internet, etc. I read this was 1 point for the rule change. I just jumped on if this was already said. No, we didn't really talk about what would make a good sponsorship. I think that's what you're getting at here. Becky, if you want to be competitive, you find a way to get the time in. Yep. Shelly's saying hi. Hi, Shelly. Thanks for jumping on. Daphne, it changes a lot. It should be if you get to, I'm guessing a dollar amount, then you should have to be an open rider. What is the rule about dollar amount? If you've earned $200,000 over the last 3 years, you can't compete as a non-pro?
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's in there.
It's been so long since I've seen the eligibility.
But in the non-pro, it's be awfully tough to win that much money. Christine, don't blur the line. It's tough enough. Yeah. Joy, no one would.
And I think it's a neat thing because there's no,
Yeah.
like, I have my beliefs on it, and of course,
Do you
yeah.
have some strong opinions about this?
I do.
Okay. Do you want to tell us about them, or?
Oh, please let me. And even just the sponsorship things, I always have a big belief on. Some of the
Becky's
people.
asking if we're considered sponsoring a non-pro. We can't even sponsor ourselves.
And I think the biggest thing is they need to set the rules, keep it as simple as possible, and just stand behind them. As soon as you have somebody trying to change the rules to fit in them, that becomes tough.
So you know what I just thought of as Becky's saying that? Becky's daughter, Scarlett, competes a lot. I've seen, I have friends whose kids compete in other events. I have one very good friend in Florida whose daughter competes all across the United States, and she has sponsorships to help her do it. And as a parent, are there important lessons and important things that would be added to her experience by having a sponsorship? Is it another way to say, you're representing this company, you need to behave in a certain way,
But
I don't think that's why it was put in,
that
but I'm
group
just
does
saying.
not have the barrel racers do not have a deal for non-professionals at the rodeos,
No, that's right.
and it becomes a
Yeah.
different thing.
Yeah,
And rodeos,
yeah.
I mean, everybody thinks they want to be sponsored at a rodeo. I mean, I've had people contact me numerous times for tack and stuff and say, well, I rodeo, would you sponsor me? If I don't know who you are, why would, because half the time I want to know the person. I want to know if the values line up, and to me, that's a bigger part of it than whether you win or lose.
Yeah, Joy's saying a sponsorship might come in handy because she has to fly to Michigan to go to the last show, and it's getting expensive. Yeah. Oh, Cindy, you missed the rule. The rule is that you, as a non-professional rider, you can now accept a sponsorship. We're just discussing whether we think that's right or not, because the membership was not consulted. It was a decision that was made amongst the board members. Have we covered this? Have we got everybody's opinions in here? Thanks for being on here, guys. We always like hearing what your opinions are. So it seems like the majority of you think that it's really not fair. It's not the right decision to have been made on your behalf. We know how you feel now, unless there's anything else you'd like to clarify.
No, I feel like the other thing.
It's not right.
Well, it's not
Just
right.
not right.
I mean, and everybody does it all day long, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you look at us, we're wearing ball caps, a stud that we like, a show that we just
Shout
went
out to Magnum with a Dream and Steel City Slide.
Yeah.
And
I think
a $500 sponsorship is very different than a $50,000 sponsorship, though. Yeah.
it is, and it depends on how it's brought about, right? And again, where's the line though? How do you keep that line so black and white where you say if you put your toe over it, you're not a non-pro?
Yeah. Cindy's asking, are we for it or against it? To sum up, Jess is not for it at all. And neither am I, but I'm more not for it because the membership wasn't consulted. And I think if the membership had been consulted and all the non-pros said yes, then if that's what you guys want, then we do that, but nobody was consulted, and I don't think that that's right.
That part I definitely disagree with. There's a lot of things that kind of get pushed
Yeah.
through, and as soon as it's pushed through and nobody knows about it until and should the membership be more active and find out what's going on at the meetings? Yes.
Yeah.
Should the NRHA be more transparent and put it out there? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You can blame both sides, but at the same time, when's the last time anybody found out what was going on in the meeting from an organization that we all belong to? it just never happens.
Yeah.
There was a vote. It was at the board meeting. Again, most people didn't know about it because so many people don't find out what's going on at any
Don't open the emails.
club or association. Yeah, you just,
Yeah.
it doesn't affect me. I don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And then once it becomes a rule, they go, oh my gosh, I don't believe in it. Is it
Yeah.
going to change because we talk about it? No. But, at least everybody's talking about it and seeing where they'll fit.
Sally's saying, does it take some of the credit from the actual pros? There is a reason pros have sponsorships because they are the pros. I do look at products that are endorsed by riders I respect and like. So that's a really interesting point, Sally, and I think sorry, we've just got somebody pulling in here and I'm not sure what's happening there. That's a really interesting point because things like supplements or products like, we sell sport boots, so this sounds like a plug, but like sport boots, supplements, that kind of thing. Do you want to buy it because a non-pro used it presumably on their 1 or 2 or 5 maybe horses, or do you want to use it because somebody who is an open rider and is using it on presumably more horses is using it and having success from it? And I think, again, it comes down to the integrity of the individual person and that sponsorship, because there are lots of people that take sponsorships and don't stand behind the product, don't even use it. They have the name on their shirt and they're using a bunch of different products.
And that's open riders. That isn't even getting into the non-pros.
That's not even into the non-pros yet. That's
just
open
the
riders.
people.
I think that's
ethical problem.
That's the more important thing. Does it take how did you word that, Sally? That was.
I don't think it
does
takes
it take
away
some
from
of the
it because
credit away?
You either respect the person that you're believing or not.
I think if you're coming at it from a perspective of what trainers get the credit or how to be a valuable person that gets sponsorships, that's a non-pro could have a lot of those same things that a business is looking for a sponsorship, right? Like a lot of it is an alignment of values. A lot of it is exposure, how many shows you're getting out to. If you're in the winner's circle, there are a lot of things that would overlap for sure. If you're known within your community or whatever. I don't know that does it take credit away from the open riders for a non-pro to have a sponsorship?
No. And I'm sure for a company just to have their name out 1 million times is more important.
Yeah, are we going to see like NASCAR where like all of the non-pro, or it's like a competition for how many things people can put on their shirts and stuff now? You think? Predictions 2022? It's not like the members can protest by not joining or not showing. It's so unfortunate. Yeah.
Well, there is ways you could fix it.
Yeah.
You get on the board. That's the problem. It takes a lot of work. You get on the boards. You become the person that's involved. We all should have been reading what was on the agenda at all the meetings for the last 20 years. Mm-hmm.
I know a non-pro who I respect how they ride better than their trainer. Yeah. Yeah, there's going to be non-pros that are an excellent candidate for a sponsorship. Period.
Yeah. Well, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it becomes, though, where the money is going to.
Yeah.
And not saying it shouldn't, take away from the open riders, it's going to go to the non-pros. I just believe keep the non-pros at a fair level playing field as much as possible. Because as soon as money gets floating around in the non-pros, it really makes the water gray.
Okay, it's getting very dark here, and we need to shut her down. Thank you for all of your input tonight, you guys. If you want the replay for this, if you jumped in at the last minute, or if you want to hear the rest of it, then go to our website, go to hazelfellperformancehorses.ca and go to the education tab. You can sign up in there. You can get all the replays. Becky, so that's a no on you guys sponsoring?
I will sponsor you 5 minutes at 3:30 in the morning
Scarlett.
at the horse show to
We'll
ride.
sponsor Scarlett.
You get 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for being on here, you guys. Like I said, if you want the replay, then head over to our website, the education tab. You can put your email in there, and then you'll get it delivered to your inbox next week on Tuesday. We have a challenge coming up. We have a challenge coming up on September 15th, where we are going to help you figure out the next few things. We're going to help you narrow down to the most important thing that you need to work on with your horse in your riding, in your showing, in your whatever it is that you're working on with your horse. We are going to help you figure that out. We've done this challenge before inside of Momentum. It's called the Cut the Chaos Challenge. And what we're going to do this time is open it up to friends of Momentum and friends of Hayes Cofell Performance Horses, so that you guys can get some clarity on where you are headed through the cooler months, and keep up some momentum through the wintertime. What else do we need to say? I think that's it. I think we're good. Right? Okay. Okay, thanks for being here, you guys. We'll talk to you next week on Tuesday at 7:30. Have a good night.